Flan and Weezer, Kitteridge. They are Upper East Side Manhattanites. They have a very lush, cozy existence in New York. He's an art dealer. He was drawn to it once upon a time because of his love of art, and now, as with a lot of people in the 90s, it's become a commodity. He sells paintings, well, anything actually, he'll sell most things in order to make a buck. And into their cozy lives, and they're great sort of aesthetes, they're great entertainers, they love their social life, and into this cozy world comes this young African American who seems on the surface to be quite extraordinary. He's learned, he's riveting to listen to, he just charms the pants off them. And he stays the night, and it turns out that he's not all that he seems. In fact, he's basically a young hustler, and it turns their world upside down. It just completely ruptures the coziness of their existence. And the journey is then how it affects each of them. Flan had the opportunity, he suddenly found himself remembering why he got into this whole thing, remembering his love of art, remembering he was sort of suddenly given a purpose again. And Weezer basically takes the ball and runs with it. She's given this opportunity to reflect on really the values of what they stand by. And she goes on a journey and Flan doesn't, which is why I was saying basically 2/3 of the way through the play you suddenly wonder what's going on with Flan. He seems to have stopped. Well, that's actually what he's done. He's because he was offended and embarrassed by the whole revelation, he just stops dead in his tracks. And it then becomes about him losing his wife, basically. She starts to go off on her journey, and he stays stalwartly where he is. He stays still. And I mean, it all sounds a bit, the way I'm saying it, it sounds like, well, what's the story? But it's fascinating seeing two people. First of all, it's a view of life that we don't often see. John Guare, the writer, said in rehearsals that he had set out to write a piece about these people on the Upper East Side who are normally villains in plays and films, because you wonder what they do, that their whole life is this sort of social, grandiose kind of nonsense. It's just a frippery. And they are normally villains. And he set out to write something, a piece about them, in which they weren't villainous, but we understood, we were almost attracted by their lifestyle before it crumbles apart. It's based on a real story of this young man who did pretend to be Sidney Poitier's son and actually crashed into the lives of a number of friends of John Guare. And he took that and ran with it. And he was also writing a play at the time about the closeness that we have to each other, and at the same time the distance that we are away from each other. Hence the title 6 Degrees of Separation. Is at that time there was a theory being meted about, which was that we all have 6 degrees of separation between us. That between you and I, if we work out friends or acquaintances or people that we've met, we would find that there are pretty much 6 degrees. And in fact, it's bizarre in this play, when we started it, there were so many connections between the various people. Leslie Manfield, who plays Weezer, and I were both in a film called Sparkle, and I played the brother of Stockard Channing, who was in it. It's extraordinary. And Obi and I were the same age. It's lots of very strange things. But it sounds like an extraordinary serious piece, but it's actually it's one of those wonderful plays that it turns on a dime. You have this lovely, light, witty humour. It's almost sort of like modern Coward. Because they're very funny people. They're very good at entertaining. They have lots of anecdotes, lots of funny stories. There's slapstick. There's all sorts of people have come to the stage door afterwards and said, I wasn't expecting it to be so funny. I had a really, really good evening. And at the same time, it'll turn on a dime, and there is a very dark underbelly. There's lots of just quite thoughtful stuff that makes you reflect in many ways. And there's also there's some wonderful hypotheses, stuff that makes you just think about. I don't know. It's a fascinating piece. And Kate Packman, the producer, said the other day. She said it's like a poem. There is the most extraordinary rhythm, and it seems to glide effortlessly from the beginning to the end. You are riveted by the story. Simple as it is, you're fascinated to find out what happens to the boy, what happens to us, and at the same time, it just steams from beginning to end. It's 90 minutes long, and it's a good old ride.